Hi, my name is Rachel and I'm 23 years old. My little brother and I always used to get along. That is, until he just started middle school and thought he was a big shot. Meanwhile, I was just starting high school and I couldn't have cared less. I just wanted to spend time with my brother. He started hanging out with his new group of friends I couldn't stand. They were always rude and talked about money all the time. When my little brother hung out with them, he started to act like they did too. I couldn't stand it. As time went on, my little brother wanted to spend less and less time with me. He never seemed to be home, and when I'd ask him to do something with me, he always laughed in my face. I didn't like the new person my brother was becoming, not one bit. I decided that I had to do something about it. After all, I'm the older one. Shouldn't it be me wanting to get away from him? So one Saturday night, I asked him to go to the movies with me. One of his favorite TV shows had been made into a movie, and I knew he'd be dying to see it. This time, though, when he laughed in my face, I jumped into action and tackled him to the floor. I had him pinned in no time flat. While he laid there squirming and pleading, I yelled at him, "Why are you being such a prick?" over and over again until he finally gave in and gave me an answer. "Just want to seem cool to those guys, okay?" he said, trying to squirm his way out from under me. "You're way cooler than any of those guys," I yelled, pushing all my body weight down on him as hard as I could. "What do I have to do to get you off of me?" he yelled in desperation. I pushed down on him harder. "Promise you'll start acting like yourself again and get yourself some better friends." I climbed off of him and stormed out of the room. Hopefully that would serve as his wake-up call. He couldn't keep acting like that. Over the next few months, things really started to change. He still wasn't around all the time, and he barely talked to me. But he was home most nights, agreed to spend time with me when the offer was enticing enough, and I never saw those other twerps hanging around. All in all, I'd say it was a pretty great improvement. One day, about 2 weeks after my 16th birthday, my little brother and I went to the movies. Our parents gave me enough money to pay for the both of us, and I brought some of my own along for snacks and drinks. It took him forever to get ready. He locked himself in his room doing God knows what for 20 minutes. We almost missed all the previews, and those are my favorite part of going to the theaters. After I knocked for the 400th time, he finally opened up and said he was ready to go. He was wearing a black sweatsuit, black sneakers, and a black beanie. What on earth took him 20 minutes? We pulled into the theater parking lot with only 5 minutes to spare before the movie started. I was so mad. I dragged him inside by the hand as fast as I could, making myself look like an angry parent. "I'm not missing any more of this movie. Come on," I yelled, dragging him along behind me. I got us some candy and popcorn to split as fast as I could and dragged him back to the right theater. We sat down, having missed over half of the previews, in one of my least favorite spots because the theater was too full. Disappointment didn't even begin to cover it. About 15 minutes into the movie, my brother gets up to go to the bathroom. Whatever, I thought, his loss. When he still hadn't come back in 30 minutes, though, I knew something was up. I didn't want to miss any of the movie, but I had to go try to find him. I went to the bathroom and couldn't find him anywhere. I walked outside and looked all around the building and parking lot to try and find him. Finally, I thought to go around to the back of the building, and sure enough, there he was with the exact people I told him to stay away from. I couldn't believe it. Luckily, they hadn't seen me yet. I stormed over there to see what they were doing and take my brother back, only to find them spray painting the back of the building. I could not believe my eyes. What had become of my little brother? "You're coming with me," I yelled as I grabbed him by the arm, trying to jerk him back towards the theater. He and his friends laughed as they ganged up on me to pull me off of him. All of a sudden, in the middle of the scuffle, we were drowned in bright blue and red lights. We had been caught and no one was going to believe that I had not been a part of it. The police rushed in and gathered us all up. It all happened so fast. Our parents were so disappointed when they picked us up that night at the prison. They said the police called them during Dad's dinner party for work and they had to try to think of an excuse to tell his boss. They asked us repeatedly what had gotten into us, saying, "It's just so unlike you," over and over. Our punishments had been pretty severe, and that was before the court ruling. At school, everyone thought we were part of the bad crowd, which was never an interest of mine. My little brother kept hanging out with those guys. I guess he figured there wasn't much I could do at this point, and he was right. I had pretty much given up. We went to court months later, and thanks to the twerps that got us into this mess to begin with, the case had been drawn out for so long. Their parents, used to this kind of behavior, paid for fancy lawyers to prolong the hearings until they could get the right judges to see the case. Unfortunately, that judge had come down with an awful case of food poisoning last minute and was replaced with no warning. The kids, now panicked, set to find their scapegoat. They told their lawyer to push for a recess so they could collect themselves and make a plan. Granted the recess, they decided my little brother, being the newest and youngest member of their group, should just be the one to take the fall. After all, they told him, they'll go easier on you because you're so young. They had it all planned. Frame my brother for the entirety of the crime and get off scot-free, resuming their normal lives without ever thinking of my brother again. When he refused, they threatened him. The leader of the gang told my brother that if he didn't play ball, he'd never be able to play anything again. He told him, once you're in with us, you're in for life. They started coming by our house at odd times of the day. It started with just one drive-by a day with the whole crew in the car, usually around 3 or 4 in the morning, yelling threats and throwing things at the house, but eventually led to 4 shifts throughout the day with about 2 of them in the car each time. If they saw us outside, they'd throw something at us, usually trash from whatever fast food place they chose to eat at that day. One time was different though. I was the only one outside and the guys stopped the car this time. The 2 guys in the car I had seen before, but I'd never really met. They got out of the car and started walking towards me. I started to move slowly back towards the house, and they started whistling and yelling at me. "Where you going, baby? Come back. Let's see that smile." I got back inside the house before they made it through our front fence, but I could hear them yelling at me and making kissy noises through our open window until they left. The next day, they set us all in separate rooms and asked for confessions. Everyone pleaded innocent but me. The story we told the court was this. I had convinced my brother to go back there with me, and his friends had followed to try and stop us. The court accepted our story, and I was sentenced to 10 years in prison. I couldn't believe how long of a sentence I got. Then I found out it wasn't just vandalism they were in trouble for. They were planning to rob the movie theater. How could this much get pinned on me? Prison was no picnic. My roommate was rude and mean. She'd snipe at me for so much as breathing too loudly. The other girls were no better. After about 6 months in, I found a small group of friends, but it was hard to keep friends in the joint. One time, I was sitting with my friends at lunch and I made a comment about the food I was eating. It was something like, with their budget, you'd think we could get some better grub around here. Little did I know, 3 of my friends worked in the kitchen and had made the food. I felt so awful, but they wanted to make sure I felt really awful. They pulled strings to have every one of the few luxuries we were allowed in prison to be taken away from me. I was served slop that resembled vomit or worse, inedible objects. My sheets were always dirty and full of bits like crumbs, dirt, or rocks. My soap was always missing when it came shower time, and my clothes or towel would always be missing after. The hazing from them was pretty bad, but it wasn't as bad as losing my friend group. I felt alone, scared, and way too vulnerable. Luckily, after just 8 years, I was told I was eligible for parole. I was shocked that I got it so quickly. After all, many of my fellow inmates said that it could take multiple attempts and hearings to get it. When my mom picked me up, I expressed this surprise to her. She couldn't believe that that was what I cared about when this was the first time I'd been off the prison grounds in 8 years. Your brother pushed for it. He's been pushing for it since you were convicted. He's paid so much money for lawyers trying to get you a parole hearing. His recommendation and character reference were part of what got you out of there, she said so casually. I couldn't believe my ears. My brother had actually understood what I did for him. Maybe he had wisened up after all. The closer we got to home, the more excited I got to see my little brother again. I had high hopes that he had returned to the little brother I always knew. When I got home, I went to my bedroom first, eager to see a room without a toilet that could be mine and mine alone. After a few moments of getting reacquainted with life outside, I went to find my little brother. I thought for sure he'd want to see me. I found him in his room, chatting on an instant messenger on his computer. "Hey bro, long time no see," I said, wanting to put all the past behind me. After a long time of silence, he said, "Look, we're even now." I just stared at him in shock. I couldn't believe my ears. "Don't look at me like that. You took the rap for us, so I got you out early. We're even. We owe you nothing." We? You're still hanging out with those guys? I was in total shock. I couldn't believe that nothing had changed. Who had my brother become? "Get out of my room," he said, laughing. I went back to my room, shut the door, and collapsed on the bed. How could my brother still be hanging out with these guys? How could he treat me like that after what I did for him? I decided I couldn't live with this, and I had to talk to him. That night, when our parents were asleep, I went into his bedroom to have a talk with him. I was going to get my little brother back one way or another. When I barged into his room, he was still at his computer, chatting with someone online. "What do you want?" he barked. "Listen, what is wrong with you? I went to jail for you. I lost 8 years of my life. I missed everything. Why are you treating me like this? Why are you still hanging out with those losers?" "Of course, you. I didn't ask for you to go to jail for me. I didn't ask for you to come after me that day. Do you realize what you did? You're the reason we got caught that night. After you went to jail, Mom wouldn't let me go anywhere. I might as well have been in prison. I never got to spend any time with friends, see anyone outside the family. She even took me out of school. If you would have let me take the fall, as was the plan, I could have gotten off so much easier. I was so much younger. They wouldn't have pinned the drugs on me, but with you, there was an opportunity. I don't blame them for taking it." Once again, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could my brother feel this way? Suddenly, I regretted everything. Why did I give up my life for such an ungrateful twerp? How could I be fooled so greatly? "You took my life away, Rachel. I should have known you wouldn't consider anything but yourself. I hope you realize we're going to get you back for this." I knew right then and there that I was going to get my brother back for this. I spent 8 years in prison, and that twerp thought I did something to him? I'll show him what me doing something to him looks like. The next day, I started making my plan. I was sitting on our front porch with a notebook, writing down any way I could think of to get back at my little brother, when an unfamiliar car pulled up and parked right outside our fence. I didn't think much of it at first and went right back to planning my revenge. That is, until I heard something familiar that caught my attention. "Hey baby, you looking good today," a familiar voice said. I looked up to see the 2 guys that had catcalled me 8 years ago walking towards me. I felt myself flood with panic, but I tried to stay calm. I couldn't move a single muscle. "Oh, what's the matter? Prison beat the fight out of you?" the other guy said as they got closer. I was so scared that I couldn't move. I didn't know what to do. I was paralyzed and my tongue was frozen. I couldn't say or do anything but sit and panic. I closed my eyes tight and wished for it all to be over. Suddenly I heard, "Hey, watch it," and opened my eyes to see my little brother throwing food at the 2 guys. He had rushed to my rescue by pelting any food he could find at these guys from our front door. "Get out of here, leave her alone." I couldn't believe it. My little brother was still in there somewhere, and he had come to help me. When the guys left, we went in the house together and turned on one of our old favorite television shows, and he told me that he treated me badly when I got out of prison because he was ashamed of what he did, and he did not know how to confront me after what I did to help him. And he started crying and hugged me for 15 minutes.